As a personal trainer, does it ever feel like Groundhog Day to you? Do you feel like, or Groundhog Month, where you're just going around in circles? Um, I've I'm a startup founder. I'm not a personal trainer. I am training to become a personal trainer. Fitness for me has been a passion of mine for a long time, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. But I have more experience as a startup founder, and so I'm kind of observing this industry, and I can't help but feel you guys are being sold just this cycle of stuff that may or may not work. And particularly around marketing, particularly around content and these sorts of things. Acquisition, as we would call them in startup land. And I think it's a bit like fashion almost, where one thing, flares go out of fashion and then they come back in and they go back out and then they come back in. This is the pattern which I'm observing, but specifically around acquisition strategies for clients. And the problem is that none of them seem to address just basic fundamentals of business. And if you can get the ABCs right, you're doing 90 to 95% of the job already. So the three things that I've seen, which I saw one of these about 7 or 8 months ago, and then then you see the other one, and then the other one, and then you start to see them come back again. They come back into fashion. So the one I saw a little while ago was email marketing. Email marketing, email marketing. Oh wow, have you heard about emails? Like, it's almost patronizing as a coach. It certainly feels like you're being patronized. Like email marketing. Come on, it's been around for 20 years. Great. Like, I think what people are trying to understand is that the people behind these things, I don't think they've got bad intentions. I just think that they are trying to exploit a way which coaches are probably overlooking, which you may be overlooking email marketing, but the problem is that there's just so much junk out there, so much junk, and it's so easy to just block these days. As someone receiving emails, block, 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 block. Um, and so I just think, great, cool. Yes, it has potential. Everyone's got an email address. Fantastic. But it just doesn't, it's not really a strategy. It's a method, it's not a strategy. The other one I see, organic content. You've got to do organic content. You've got to do so much content. Nobody knows you exist. And the problem is that yes, these things are true. Of course they're true. But are they things that really transpire into creating, yeah, I think the organic content is a skill. And unless it's a skill that you invest significant amounts of time in, unfortunately, the algorithm just isn't going to distribute you the way it would be required for you to actually build up that following. The amount of coaches I see stuck around between 1,000 and 2,000 followers on Instagram is it's mind-boggling. It's everywhere. It feels like there's just this. They've built up some profile, but um, there's no method to understand how to move past that. And you just have these people saying, hey, you need to be doing more organic content, more, like 5 posts a day, 3 posts a day, post on your story, post on this, post on that. And the problem is that none of these make you any money. Not a single one makes you money. The only way that you make any money is by getting a client to pay you. That's it. And this is the fallacy of marketing. Steve Jobs famously hated marketing. He was like, it doesn't work. I just want to focus all on my product. Now, this is obviously an extremity, but you can understand the complacency behind it, because I think we've just got so used to the idea of, oh yeah, you've got to put yourself out there so people know. I'm like, well, sort of, but the thing is, you're doing it. Again, going back to that Steve Jobs example, they created a great product before they went out and did lots of marketing. If you do it the other way around, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And that takes me on to the third thing, which is paid social media. So organic is the stuff that you just post yourself. Paid is the stuff that you post using Meta's business tools, and away you go. And people talk about these things like, oh, like it's like turning water into wine. Just judge social media by put yourself in the shoes of or put yourself in your own shoes. How often does an ad on social media really engage your intention? And the ones that were, how much thought and time had to be put into that in order just to grasp you for that first couple of milliseconds, 1 second. You know, it takes a huge amount of effort and thought. And people talk about these things like they're easy to execute upon, and they're just not. But the problem with all of these is that they are what you should do as a result of doing the fundamentals. These are all these are all nice to haves. These are all nice to haves. And the problem is that no one tells coaches that. The coaches feel like these are priorities, I should say, and they're simply not. So we'll go through a couple of things for you now, which for me as a startup founder, this is the Steve Jobs thing I just mentioned. This is getting the product right. This is getting the fundamentals right. So firstly, you have to make buying from you as easy as possible. Now, I went undercover and did a bunch of research with online coaches, pretending to be a client to about 200 different trainers. And just the way there was no one process that coaches followed, but there was a consistency of making the customer's life harder than it should be. Here's a form, let's have a conversation, let's do this, let's do that. Here's a I even saw screenshots of payment details. I'm like, mate, I've not even spoken to you, why would I give you money? It just screams scam artist when you're trying to give someone money for a service and you've not even spoken to the person. Like, not good at all. So firstly, do the easiest way for you to lower friction and increase buying speed, because if you can increase the time between someone showing interest and someone buying, guess what? More people do it. This is the whole Amazon one-click philosophy. Now, the best way for you to do this is just to lay out the different steps within your sales process and make sure they are fundamental. If it's not a definite sorry. If it's not a definite yes, it's a definite no. This is a really good rule. If you're like, oh, I'm not quite sure, get rid of it. If you don't absolutely need this bit of information from the client, get rid of it. And you'll end up with something, firstly, with fewer steps. So you're already helping the client move faster from interest into buying. But then the second thing I want you to do is then order them in the order with which they're easiest for a client to do versus most time consuming for a client to do. So for example, the thing at the bottom might be an intake form, and it's as simple as that. And then you've instantly transformed the buying process from a client perspective, which will increase conversion and therefore sales. So notice you are now getting your funnel in order. You're not talking about stuff yet because you're not ready to scale yet. You don't need to be pushing yourself out there just yet. Now, the second thing to do is social proof. Now, social proof is the highest conversion tool that you have available. Do you trust a doctor who's just gone to university and never helped anyone, versus a doctor who's helped 1,000 people but never went to university? It's the doctor who helped 1,000 people. And so just spend time gathering testimonials, make them up to date, show them off in every possible situation available. Coaches, again, they have their testimonials on their Instagram story stuff. I'm like, okay, sure, fine, but I've still got to go off and find that as a client. I still have to look for that. I still have to think, okay, where is this testimonial going to be? Like, how do I know that you are a good coach? I don't know. But what would help me is other people's buying experiences. So if you're in DMs, bring it into the GM. Say, hey Bob, great to hear from you. Here's a couple of testimonials from my other clients. Would love to get on a call sometime soon. This is just instantly, you're massively increasing the chance of someone showing interest. I think coaches all too often think that, they were never interested or they were just window shopping. No, like if someone's messaged you, you don't walk into a shop, into a shoe shop just to look at the shoes. You probably want a pair of shoes. 9 times out of 10. So, don't assume that people are just there window shopping. Assume that they're interested and make it easy for them and show off that social proof. And then the final thing is on an intro call, which for me, I still believe is the universal best thing to be doing, in that first point of contact. Notice how you would frame that against the sort of person who I came across in my research, where they said, "You're interested? Okay, cool. It was $1,000, and here's a screenshot of my payment details." No, no. It's called personal training. Yeah, let's not lose sight of where we are, what we're doing. So, intro calls. Now you have to learn to talk. That comes down to two things: saying the right words and saying them in the right way. Now, saying the right words, that comes down to not having a script, but also not going complete full Monty. Have some kind of structure that you can tweak and refine over time. Don't be reading their word for word and then this thing happened and that thing happened, but also don't be talking about stuff which is completely unnecessary. Have some kind of framework, and just use this as an opportunity to refine and tweak. All the best public speakers, none of them have a script. None of them. They have frameworks, and it just means that they can keep themselves moving forward and in the right direction whilst letting their natural tone come out. And then the right tone, sorry, the right, letting their natural voice come out, the natural phrases. But anyway, so and then saying the right tone. Now this is simple but effective. It's very simply, do I go up at the end of each sentence in order to ask a question? So, hey Bob, how are you? Hey Bob, how are you? Very different, very different. And you can use this to manipulate the conversation, but most of all, you can use it to gain and build confidence with the person you're speaking to. So I did my master's degree in psychology, and you are as a therapist, your job is to build this rapport, and tone is a massive way of doing this. Control your tone. Don't because you can say the same phrase and sound very anxious or sound very confident, depending on whether you go up or whether you go down at the end of each sentence. So that's it for today's video. I've rather enjoyed it, actually. It's nice to be able to call out I don't want to say nonsense, because I don't think people have bad intentions. I think people are trying to make money from personal trainers who are desperate and don't know what they're doing and need some guidance. But I don't think they necessarily have bad intentions. They just they look for opportunities that personal trainers have probably overlooked, so that they can try and say, "Hey, have you tried this new shiny thing?" And actually, the shiny thing isn't that new. It's actually been dusted off about 20 times already. But anyway, so I hope you found this useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment. I will be able to respond because I have no one watching my YouTube videos, and so I will see a notification when it comes up. So you better if you do write a notification, make sure it's a nice one. Otherwise, I'll come find you. I won't come find you, don't worry. I have nothing to worry about. But yeah, I'll see you soon, and thank you very much. Bye.